There.
We're live.
We're live.
We are live.
Great.
We are verifying that we're live.
We just went live, but I'm a little worried that we're at a new. So go back to the Hangout.
How do I get to Hangout?
Oh, hang on.
Oh, I see us live actually on YouTube. So we're live.
We're live. Excellent. Hello, everyone. It's Chris from itsashort. We're delighted that you watched The Wolf and the Medallion. We're here tonight with Jeremy and James and Nasa, who are going to have a discussion about the movie.
We are live.
So go ahead, James Mills from the Joy Trip Project, who's going to interview Jeremy and Andy.
We are verifying that we're live.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming to the Hangout. I hope you really enjoyed the movie The Wolf and the Medallion. It's one of my all-time favorite short films. So we'll just go ahead and start our conversation with Jeremy. Jeremy, first of all, welcome to the Hangout. How are you doing now?
We're live. Excellent. Hello, everyone. It's Chris from itsashort. We're delighted that you watched The Wolf and the Medallion. We're here tonight with Jeremy and James and Nasa, who are going to have a discussion about the movie.
We are live.
So go ahead, James Mills from the Joy Trip Project, who's going to interview Jeremy and Andy.
We are verifying that.
Okay, Jeremy, you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for coming out tonight. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, fantastic film. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I'm first of all, I'm curious to know what was the primary motivation to create the film The Wolf and the Medallion?
The primary motivation was to tell a story and do it in my own way. And after a lot of discussion and a lot of writing and a lot of back and forth with other writers and everybody else involved in the film, telling it as personable and personal as possible was how we ended up telling the story. And doing it with the letter to my son was just what felt right, I guess.
And through the process of that, I mean, I know that you are an adventurer, you are an artist, but you're also a father. What was it like being away from your family for such a long time?
That's a good question. Maybe I'm used to it. Being away is tough, you know. Like I think the magic day for us is 9 days. Like 9 days into any expedition or any trip is when I start to have that tipping point where it stops being quite as much fun, and you're in this transition period where you're having fun, but you miss your family enough that the percentage of fun starts to decline. It starts the slow decline to the trip being over. That's the magic transition, I guess.
So now, for this particular expedition to China, were you already thinking about making it into the documentary film that we ultimately saw? I mean, and at what point did you decide to turn this into an animated adventure short?
You know, that's a good question. We were shooting footage on that trip, so of course we anticipated doing something with it. We didn't shoot a lot. You know, Corey Rich was on the rope shooting stills for most of that trip, and video was kind of not an afterthought so much, but it's just like, oh, we're here, so let's shoot a little video. And so then when it came time to tell a story, it was animation was fun, but it was also kind of the only way to tell certain parts of the story. You know, like how do you tell a dream sequence, and how do you tell something that's really personal, like the medallion, which was that medallion that actually hung on my neck, without it being just talking heads the whole time. And so the animation wasn't plotted. ahead of time. The animation was an answer to a question of how do we tell this story in a unique way.
So can you give me an idea then as to what the most technically challenging aspect of creating such a complicated dream sequence through animated images?
The dream sequence specifically is I shot it in a closet, and so we had a camera mounted above my head for all that. When we kind of zoom into the face and we zoom into my mind, it's ripping paper. It's I don't know, 300, 400 pieces of paper stacked on top of each other that were moving through dimensionally. So that wasn't computer generated. It was actual pieces of paper that you'd tear just a tiny bit and take a frame, tear a tiny bit, take a frame, tear a tiny bit, take a frame. And so that was really difficult to kind of work in reverse and understand how to shoot that and make it obvious that we're moving through a person's mind. And so in timing things correctly to have, this happen and then another inch of descending into the mind, and this happened and another inch. And so altogether, I think it was 2 feet tall of paper stacked on top of each other and then bound together.
So in the creation of the film, you also worked with Andy Michael, the music composer, to be able to create a really dramatic score. How did you decide to turn this into a live theater production, which is the way that I first saw it for the first time? At what point did you make the transition into turning this into a stage show?
Well, that's another thing that kind of evolved within the project. I didn't go into it planning that, and as I was writing the script, I was hanging out with Beta Calhoun, who is a producer from 5 Point Film Festival, and the question that she proposed to me is, what is your dream creative project? And so I started defining for her, my dream creative project is to have a stage where the musicians are part of the film, a stage where the lines between performance art and film is blurred, and she's nodding and listening and nodding and listening. Let's figure out a way to do it. So once Beta kind of gave that permission, so to speak, my mind started to expand as to what could this thing be beyond just a film. And so we started filling in the blanks, and Andy just joined us. I approached Andy Michael and said, hey, yeah, we're going to have you write the music, but what do you think about writing it to be live? What would that look like? And so the more questions I asked, the more answers I got, I guess.
So now, Beta Calhoun at the time was the director of the 5 Point Film Festival, and that was the organization that put this entire project together. And Andy Michael, the composer, just joined us online. And Andy, first of all, welcome to the Hangout. I'm glad you could make it. You're in a coffee shop in Houston, Texas. Welcome. Thanks for coming here.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to be here.
Okay. Well, give us an idea of what was it like to be able to create a unique score for The Wolf and the Medallion and share this particular story with a live audience?
Yeah, I think it was a unique challenge in that it wasn't just make the music, send it off and walk away. It's compose the music, have a relationship with the content, and sort of it's building a relationship with the animators and Jeremy and the content itself at the same time, and so that was a unique challenge. And then of course performing the music with the film live, it was kind of like performing the film live, so that's something that was I'd never done before.
Well, I think the result was pretty remarkable, and I think that anyone who had the opportunity to see the film, even online, could really appreciate the amount of mastery that went into making this particular piece of work. What can you tell us about the process that goes into actually performing a piece like this on stage? I mean, did you have to do anything special to make that happen?
To say that it was all live, I think, is a little misleading. We did need to have some elements of the music built into the track so that we could hear it in our earpiece and sort of, play, I would say, 60 to 70% of the music live, but we were keeping a little bit. But yeah, in terms of creating the content, it was interesting because we've got the animators over here at these two desks, who are also the musicians, and Jeremy over here, who is, animating and illustrating and doing all of that. So we would take frequent breaks, sometimes to rehearse some of the music while we're creating the content and going back and forth. So it was truly a uniquely collaborative process.
So, in Jeremy, in the creation of the overall project, you also did quite a bit of demonstration of your work live on stage. What does it mean to be able to put together the type of illustrations that go into making this story possible, and at the same time, make it compelling for an audience to watch, either live on stage or as we've just seen in the film online?
It was like herding cats, basically. It was extremely challenging because everything was so separate, and we're trying to figure out how to bring it all together in the end. And it was really challenging, like trying to focus on and Andy can speak to it. It's like, do something magic, and then show me when the magic's ready. And now I'm going to do my magic, and here are the animators over here. Do something magic and show me when the magic is ready. And that was really difficult, and you had to put a lot of trust, and especially for the stage show, you go out on stage and you've got 8 people, and we're not a touring rock band. I haven't spent 200 hours in a garage with these guys. It was a lot of trust to go out there and on stage and trust that everything was going to work. I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, actually, it does very well. I think a big part of what makes this whole process so interesting is that there's a lot of different elements that are layered in on top of one another. There's the climbing, there's the music, and there's the artwork. Now, with regard to everything that we've seen right now, now that we have had a chance to see it, can you give me an idea as to what you want people most to come away with, having learned from this particular story, and the lessons that you try to impart at the end?
Well, it's difficult to say that because what I learned by creating The Wolf and the Medallion and doing our, not just the tour, but it went on a number of film tours, and so I started to receive feedback from around the world from people that would see it at different film festivals, and whatever it is that I wanted to impart kind of didn't matter anymore because people were filling in the blanks themselves and finding their own answer. Just like with any kind of art, they were finding their own truths, I guess you could say, own thoughts, and in the end it really didn't matter what it was that I was trying to say. It mattered more like how people read it. And maybe in the simplest answer, I was trying to tell a story of my love for my son, and so with any good story, you kind of come in and put yourself in that situation, and so the answers of what it was supposed to be for people is it was for them to find their own answers, I guess.
No, that makes perfect sense. Now, we just got a question from the Twitter feed. Scott Coriel asks, you tell Zion that he has taught you so much, and he's curious to know, what have you learned from having a son, and what does he do to motivate you?
Well, he's taught me how to change a diaper, and but that was 7 years ago, and I've learned a lot since then. He's taught me a lot about priorities, motivation, taught me about how to be more about the family and more about something beyond myself, something that is something that is not just myself. I think when you have a child, you kind of sacrifice a lot to be a parent. You sacrifice a lot of your own freedoms. You sacrifice a lot of your own time, and the more you invest that time into that child, I feel like you learn more about yourself and obviously more about them. And he's taught me to slow down. Certainly when they're very young, they teach you to slow down because you're forced to slow down. You have to push a cart or a stroller. You have to put the car seat in and out. You have to slow down and take naps, and that stuff changes. But still, life slows down a lot, and he's taught me that.
Okay. We also had a question from Sarah, who asks, you have a lot of do you have graphic training? The trailer design really blew me away. What was your graphic training like to create this film?
Who is that from?
From Sarah Sheesh. I'm blowing her name, I'm sorry.
Yeesh.
Yeesh, there we go.
And the question is,
you obviously have graphic training. What kind of training did you have?
I don't even know how to answer that question. I went to school for a little bit. I went to college for a little bit out of high school many years ago, and was studying commercial art, and did that for a short time, and then started working for the magazines in the mid-'90s, and it was kind of a lot of experimenting and a lot of self-taught projects. One project leads to another, and that's been pretty much the process. One thing leads to another.
Okay, and we have another question from Teresa Bell, and she's curious to know if there were any barriers to filming in China to create The Wolf and the Medallion.
Yeah, that's a really intuitive question. There were. I mean, dealing with the bureaucracy, getting into the valley. We were in Kekatohai Valley on the Mongolian border. It was very difficult. Each step of the way we had to get permission, and we weren't even allowed in the valley unless we had some sort of military escort go in with us. And the cameras come out and the microphones come out, and it's a little more than eyebrows are raised. This is a canyon that has just been purchased by this businessman to create this park, and they don't really have a scheme in place for people like us that come into the valley. So every step of the way, it was very challenging, and you'd get permission to go climb this particular mountain, and you'd arrive there, and there'd be military waiting, asking us questions, and a lot of times it was difficult because we had to do 2 to 3 layers of permission through different languages. So you'd go from Han Chinese to Kazakh to English to back to Han to Kazakh, and it was this smash up of cultures all right there, and it was really difficult. That whole trip, it was challenging just to get to the rock. Like, the climbing turned out to be the easiest part of that trip. Filming and getting permission was really, really difficult. That's a good question.
Getting permission from your wife.
And getting permission from my wife, right.
Well, I think that what's great about this whole project is that it put you in the position to do the project that you're working on right now, and that is the much anticipated film and book project called Drawn. And for that, I have the opportunity to share a little bit about that project with a film clip from your Kickstarter campaign. And after that concludes, I'll pass the hosting responsibilities over to Nasa Koski from the Adventure Film School. So we can go ahead and play the tape. We can make the transition.
Okay.
Okay, everyone. I hope everybody can hear it. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece.
I don't think the film is playing. Should we just maybe direct people to go watch it on Kickstarter, maybe?
Man.
So, Jeremy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your project and where people can find your Kickstarter and see that trailer?
Hey, I guess it didn't work. I'm back. What was the question again?
I was going to say, why don't you tell a little bit about your project and where people can go and watch that trailer?
Well, the easiest way is just to go to Kickstarter and in the search field, search Drawn, D-R-A-W-N, and it will be one of the first projects that comes up.
Awesome. And so tell us a little bit about what that project is and, yeah, just what that project is.
So The Wolf and the Medallion was one story from 4 stories, and those 4 stories were the 4 directions from home. So I go from have an adventure in each direction. And so Drawn is the story of those four directions. So it's a book and a film, and so that's what is happening at Kickstarter is the launch of that. It's the launch of the project in the public, but it's been going on for 4 or 5 years now.
I see. So why did you pick Kickstarter as a way to try to raise funds for it? What was your thought process there?
Well, it was really difficult. It was a really difficult process. I had a Kickstarter project going for a year and a half. You know, like I opened the project within Kickstarter and started filling in the blanks of how to launch it, and that was a lot of thinking and talking and interviewing people whether they thought it was the right approach. And eventually I just decided if I'm going to do this and do this right, I want to go to my friends and fans and audience, and it's paid off. It's done really well.
Yeah, so tell us how the campaign has been going. I think our audience is a lot of filmmakers, and so you know, a lot of them have either run their own campaigns before, thought of it as a means to raise funds. So maybe just share with us a little bit about that experience, what it's been like so far, maybe some things that you've learned.
Well, I've tried really hard not to hop on the emotional roller coaster of the up and down of it, and just allowed it to be what it is, you know, and it, you know, it's quite a thing to be vulnerable and say, this is what I want to do, and this is how much it costs, and this is what it's going to take, and it's done pretty well. And I don't know what I don't have. You know, I'm getting a lot of questions about what's the magic recipe, and I have no idea. I mean, it just kind of happened, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, did you do anything to like try to gain momentum before? Like, did you reach out to people? How did you try to prime the engine, so to speak, in getting your Kickstarter launched? Did you do that?
The week before I launched it, once I committed and once I started building the trailer, I'd put little teasers out on Instagram and on Facebook and across social media, and then would invite my friends to join me. It was a thing that you don't want to do. I mean, it's like going to your friend's door and trying to sell them Girl Scout cookies, and you know, I'm not selling Girl Scout cookies, but it's not the easiest thing to go and ask and say, hey, will you share this? Will you spread the word? Will you go to your audience and mention this? And I think that the reason it's had success is because of people saying yes to that.
Yeah. Well, you had a very successful campaign. I mean, you got funded in about 1 week, and I think one of the things that people might want to know is, you know, if they still want to contribute, like, how will that help your campaign? Like, you know, is it just done now and you're good to go, or?
Right. Well, it's like I was telling someone earlier. It's like if I was opening an ice cream truck and I had a whole lot of ice cream, but I only wanted to sell 50 ice cream cones, but I still had a line of people. I'd keep selling ice cream if I still had ice cream in the truck. So, if it goes above and beyond our minimum goal, it just furthers the project. It makes, I can hire, there's a couple animators that I'd like to bring into the project, and that's really exciting that possibility is happening. There's some music that I would like to be able to bring in that I couldn't afford otherwise, and now that's looking like a possibility. And so how it works on Kickstarter, you start with your absolute minimum, and that minimum includes what it costs to deliver the awards. So it's not a charity fundraising. It's people are coming and pre-purchasing items, and that's what you're asking your audience to do. And so part of that number that you come up with on Kickstarter includes what it costs to deliver those items.
So can you tell us a little bit about, like you just did an online premiere with Wolf and the Medallion. You're going to have to think about distribution for Drawn. Like, what do you think about in terms of that? Like, how do you think about distribution? Do you think about it up front? Do you sort of do it after the fact? What's your plan?
Well, I don't have a good answer to that. Right now, the distribution will be online. I have just decided thus far not to do DVDs, and that'll change if the demand changes. But it seems like people want downloads or they want streaming these days. When I buy a DVD, oftentimes I'll end up taking the DVD, putting it in the basket, and then end up watching it streaming anyways with a code,
Yeah. Awesome. So one of the hard things as an artist is to try to monetize what we do, or like what's your goals out of these? Are you just want it to get out to the world? Are you trying to monetize it? What's your thoughts?
These personal films, that's a pretty long conversation.
Filmmakers want to know, man.
I mean, you want to survive, right? Like you want to survive as an artist and be able to feed your wife and kids and afford your junky climber van repairs. But so far how I've made films is just survival. Just get whatever you can for it and make the thing as best you can. But I think what an artist wants more than anything is an audience. And so having an audience and broadening the audience has always been important.
Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit about itsashort? It's a new platform that's coming out for short films, and what it does is it's allowing artists to get paid while fueling people with films. So can you talk a little bit about that and why you went onto it to launch Wolf and the Medallion?
That's a really popular conversation topic at the film festivals amongst indie filmmakers is how do we reach our audience and how do we make a living at it? How do we survive? You have backers, or maybe you have a corporation or a company behind your project, but then when you're done, it kind of gets thrown up online and it's free for the world to watch, and then you move on to the next thing. And the question has always been, will someone find a way for indie filmmakers to generate income for the life of the film? And when it's not a theater release, when it's not a feature-length film, where does it go? Where does it survive? And how do we keep doing this? And so there's a number of outlets out there trying to figure that out and answer that question well. And I like that itsashort was new, that it's just launching, and I'm excited to be a part of it, of anything that's new and that's for the creator, that's for the artist.
That's awesome. Well, we have some questions for the internet. People have been buzzing all day and all the last few days about this event, and so I was just going to dig into some of them. Someone from Twitter, Matt Kaufman, said, Was it a hard decision to offer your blue Patagonia hoodie as a premium for backing your project?
Yeah, it's a very special, magical jacket, so of course it's hard to let go of it. What's funny is I wore it last week at 5 Point Film Festival, and someone came up and said, "Is this the hoodie from the Kickstarter project?" I'm like, oh yeah. And so a couple times I had left it on the back of a seat and would go out and mingle and come back, and I couldn't find it right away. I'm like, oh, I wasn't mad to lose my jacket. I was mad that I was going to let that backer down. Like, I can't be traveling with this thing now. And no, we were just trying to think of some things that would be random and funny, and that thing's full of holes. So I've taped it, and now it's time for someone else to give it some love.
That's awesome. Okay. So we actually posted this on Reddit, and we had a couple of people ask questions, which is pretty cool. Man, Fayette Villain DJ asked, how can one turn a passion for rock climbing, photography, or visual arts in general into a profession? Is it about who you know? Is it about the luck of getting noticed? Is it a degree in visual arts?
It's kind of a magic equation, really. You know, I think more and more I'm finding out that the degree is not the primary ingredient to that equation, because we're a self-educated Googling people now. Like, we Google our education, it seems like, and it's easy to learn without having to go to a university. And you know, is it the luck of getting noticed? I would say that you could say yes to anybody's path, you know, but I find that a fulfilled profession follows your passion. Everyone that I've met that seems like they really love their job and that they're really successful at it is really passionate about what it is they're doing, whether you're a photographer, a writer, anybody in the creative industry. You know, I think you have to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, kind of a follow-on to that, we had Mikey Dubs say, as an artist, filmmaker, how do you combine those interests with climbing for sustainable income? So passion projects are great for the soul, but it's hard to eat. So how do you make that work?
One of my favorite quotes from my wife from like 15 years ago, same wife I have now. One of my favorite quotes is we had someone offer us trade of gear for some creative animation project, and she said, "You can't eat chalk bags." And so I try to reference that fairly often. I think the answer to the question is, how do you sustain it, is being adaptable. You know, I've done a lot of things that I wasn't qualified to do, but someone said, "Can you do this?" and I just say yes. So I think saying yes when you're approached with a challenge, and you know, being open to new experiences is huge. I don't know if I'm answering his question very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of just asking, or, you know, not settling, I guess, maybe. Don't settle for the chalk bag.
Yeah, don't settle for the chalk bag, but then also say yes to things that, you know, let's say, man, I really want to do this creative project, but so-and-so can't afford it. You know, adapting to budgets if it's something that you really want to do.
Awesome. Let's see. How do you manage How do you manage the other side of the experience? Fear, trepidation, challenges?
Is this a tweeted question?
Yeah, I don't know who it's from, actually.
How do you manage?
How do you manage, like, the fear side? Fear and trepidation, challenges when you're out there, when you're on these expeditions. Oh, it's from Christine from It's a Short.
All right. Managing fear. That's the question?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think comfort, putting yourself in those types of situations as often as possible so that you become comfortable with it, and you know, repetition repetition in those types of situations breeds comfort. And I like to do this thing where I kind of tell myself, you chose to be here. When let's say I'm climbing and I'm far away from my gear, or I'm thousands of miles from home and I'm in a scary situation, I try to remind myself to breathe and own that situation. You chose to be here. No one put you here. You didn't get forced into this situation. You chose to be here at the end of this rope. And then a lot of times that calms me down to kind of own that situation. And, it's a calculated risk posture that you put into.
Yeah, I mean, and you probably use that to fuel your art.
Yeah, I mean, any of those experiences factor in to the full experience.
So we had a question on Facebook from Jordan Green, and they asked, I'm trying to network with potential partners, people that want to get things done. What was your greatest resource for networking exposure, and what drove you there?
I would say, like I was saying earlier, saying yes a lot, saying yes to various, let's say you are a photographer and someone says, can you do film? Well, say yes, of course you can do film. You're going to Google it and figure it out, because what you're doing is developing the engine, the engine of creativity to apply to whatever tool it is that you have. And so saying yes a lot. And then just making friends. Go to the places where these creatives are. Sending an anonymous email to someone that you want to collaborate with is not the approach. Go be face-to-face and surround yourself with doers, people who are doing things, not just talking about doing things, but they're out actually actively pursuing these creative projects. I've found that's huge, just interacting with people in person and not via social media and email. Yeah. Actual real-life face-to-face time still does happen in the world.
And how do you make that face-to-face time happen? Like, where does that happen? Where do you go?
Specifically in our industry, it's hosted climbing and biking and racing events. The industry standard trade shows, which is in Salt Lake City twice a year, but then there's, 15, 20 across the country. And you do, let's say, his questions about photography, you do see numerous photographers and filmmakers there interacting with old clients, old friends, potential clients, and you got to go where the action is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to just kind of put yourself out there too. Just approach people and introduce yourself, and do the old handshake and introduce yourself.
Right. It's old school, but it still works.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. We had another one from Facebook. What's the worst thing that's happened during one of your projects, from Alexander Flats?
Worst thing that's happened, specifically to Drawn, the worst experience was in South America and Venezuela. We were down there in the Grand Sabana jungle to climb Acapan Tepui, these great, beautiful, huge sandstone walls. And 4 days into our first attempt on the climb, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but both of my climbing partners were injured beyond being able to do anything. So we had a broken bones and one of us on crutches and one of us with a broken hand, basically. Wow. 4 days into the first climb. And so you've prepared, you're fit, you've got all your immunizations, you've worked your way into the wall, you've set up a base camp, you're prepared, all your gear is there, and you've flown halfway around the world, and these unforeseen circumstances happen and forced us to basically abandon that trip. But luckily it was, just broken bones, so that's fixable. We didn't lose any limbs.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know. It seems like I mean, you just never know what's going to happen sometimes on expeditions. And so did that become a part of Drawn, and so that's something that we're going to find out about?
Yeah, so that's in both the book and the film. That part of the story is in there.
Awesome. All right, well, we're getting close to our wrap-up time, so I was just going to give you a chance to say any final comments. And, yeah, we're going to go to prizes, because I heard there's some really sweet prizes that features your art for people who've been on Twitter.
I guess I would just say come check out the trailer at Kickstarter. Just search Drawn or Drawn the Movie, and you'll find the Kickstarter. And we've got 5 days left, and a lot of our rewards are gone, but the ones that are left are specific only to Kickstarter backers, and once they're gone, they're gone. And then you can also check out tribesontheedge.com. That is my next trip. I'm leaving in a few days down to the Amazon, so check that out too.
Awesome. Cool. Well, okay, I'm going to hand it over to It's a Short, and Christine's going to tell us about the prizes and the winners. And I also just wanted to say that people who are interested in learning filmmaking, we have just launched a new website. It's at www.adventurefilmschool.com, and we're going to be sharing a lot of stuff about what creatives in the outdoor industry are doing, and we also have courses there too. So thank you, and back to you, Christine. Oh, Christine, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Can everybody hear me now? James, can you share a little bit about the Joy Trip project?
Oh, sure. No, I'm always happy to. Well, the Joy Trip project is a blog and a podcast feed that you can find at joytripproject.com. And that's actually how Jeremy and I became friends back in 2009. He was a guest on my podcast. You can pick up a lot of my work in the National Geographic blog, Beyond the Edge, and I'm looking forward to telling more interesting stories about people in the outdoors.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Jeremy, do you want to sort of thank all of the people that participated in this experience that we're having today?
Yes, thank you guys. It was a lot of fun.
All right, all right. So we're going to actually publish the prize winners on our Twitter feed and on the Facebook page. We want to thank everybody. Jeremy, you're amazing. Have a terrific trip on your new project. NASA, thank you so much for the Adventure School Film School's support of this effort. James, we would not be here without you. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.